It's the year 610 CE. In a cave high above the bustling trade city of Mecca, a 40-year-old merchant sits in solitude, wrestling with the spiritual emptiness he sees around him. The air is thick with desert heat, and the only sound is the whisper of wind through stone. Suddenly, a presence fills the cave. A voice commands, "Read." But the merchant cannot read. "Read," the voice insists again. What happens next will change the course of human history forever, affecting over 1.8 billion people today. This is not just the story of a religion. This is the story of empires that rose and fell, of scientific discoveries that lit the dark ages, of art and architecture that still takes our breath away, and of a faith that spread faster than any ideology in human history. Welcome to the extraordinary journey of Islam. To understand Islam's revolutionary impact, we must first step into the world that existed before it. Imagine the Arabian Peninsula in the 6th century, a harsh, unforgiving landscape where survival depended on your tribe, your sword, and your wits. The desert wasn't empty. Caravans carrying silk, spices, and precious metals snaked across ancient trade routes connecting the Byzantine Empire to the north, Persia to the east, and the kingdoms of Africa to the south. At the heart of this network sat Mecca, a city that would become the center of the world's fastest-growing religion. But Mecca wasn't just a trading post. It was a spiritual crossroads where hundreds of gods were worshipped. The Kaaba, a cube-shaped stone building at the city's heart, housed 360 idols representing different tribal deities. Pilgrims came from across Arabia to worship, trade, and participate in the sacred months when warfare was forbidden. This was a world of extreme contrasts. Wealthy merchants lived in luxury while the poor struggled to survive. Women had few rights, and female infanticide was common. Slavery was widespread. Tribal warfare was constant, with blood feuds lasting generations. Yet it was also a world of remarkable oral poetry, where memory was prized above all else. The Arabs were master storytellers, and their language was so sophisticated that poets were revered like rock stars today. Into this world, around 570 CE, was born a child who would be called Muhammad, the Praised One. His father died before his birth, his mother when he was 6. Raised by his grandfather and later his uncle, Muhammad grew up knowing both privilege and hardship. As Muhammad grew into adulthood, he became known for his honesty and integrity. Merchants trusted him with their goods, earning him the nickname Al-Amin, the trustworthy one. He married Khadija, a wealthy widow and successful businesswoman, in what was clearly a partnership of equals. But material success couldn't fill the spiritual void Muhammad felt. He was disturbed by the inequality, corruption, and moral decay he saw around him. Like many thoughtful people of his time, he began to retreat to the mountains around Mecca for prayer and meditation. He was searching for something. He just didn't know what. The year was 610 CE. Muhammad, now 40, was meditating in the Cave of Hira as he had done many times before. But this time was different. According to Islamic tradition, the angel Gabriel appeared to him in a form so overwhelming that Muhammad was paralyzed with fear. The angel commanded, "Iqra," read or recite. "I cannot read," Muhammad replied. He was, like most people of his time, illiterate. The angel embraced him so tightly he could barely breathe, then released him and commanded again, "Read." "I cannot read," Muhammad gasped. A third time, the angel embraced him and said, "Read in the name of your Lord who created man from a clot of blood. Read, and your Lord is most generous, who taught by the pen, taught man what he did not know." Muhammad stumbled home, terrified and confused. Was he going mad? Had he been possessed by a demon? He told his wife Khadija what had happened, and her response would prove crucial to the birth of Islam. "I swear by Allah," she said, "Allah will never disgrace you. You maintain family ties. You bear the burden of the weak. You help the poor and destitute, you entertain guests, and you help against misfortunes. Khadija took Muhammad to her cousin Waraka, a Christian scholar who had studied the scriptures. After hearing Muhammad's account, Waraka declared, "This is the same being who keeps the secrets whom Allah had sent to Moses. I wish I were young and could live up to the time when your people would turn you out." "Will they turn me out?" Muhammad asked. "Anyone who came with something similar to what you have brought was treated with hostility," Waraka replied. "If I should remain alive till the day when you will be turned out, then I would support you strongly." The revelations didn't come all at once. They arrived over 23 years, responding to events, answering questions, providing guidance. These verses, known as the Quran, were memorized by Muhammad's followers and later compiled into the book that over 1 billion people consider the direct word of God. The early revelations focused on fundamental themes: the oneness of God, the importance of prayer and charity, the reality of judgment after death, and the need for social justice. This wasn't just a spiritual message, it was a complete social revolution. Muhammad began sharing these revelations with his closest family and friends. His wife Khadija was the first to believe, followed by his young cousin Ali, his freed slave Zayd, and his close friend Abu Bakr. These early Muslims, known as the Sahaba or companions, would become the foundation of a movement that would change the world. As Muhammad's following grew, so did the opposition. The message of Islam threatened the very foundations of Meccan society. If there was only one God, what would happen to the pilgrimage trade that brought wealth to the city? If all people were equal before Allah, what would happen to the tribal hierarchy? The Meccan elite, led by Abu Lahab, Muhammad's own uncle, and Abu Jahl, began a campaign of persecution against the early Muslims. They were beaten, tortured, and ostracized. Some were forced to lie on burning sand in the desert heat. Others had large stones placed on their chests as they lay in the sun. The persecution became so intense that Muhammad advised some of his followers to emigrate to Abyssinia, modern-day Ethiopia, where the Christian king was known for his justice. This was Islam's first expansion beyond Arabia, and it established a pattern of seeking refuge in pluralistic societies. When the Meccan leaders sent a delegation to demand the Muslims' return, the king asked to hear their side of the story. Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, speaking for the Muslims, said, "We were an ignorant people, worshipping idols, eating dead animals, committing abominations, breaking family ties, treating guests badly, and the strong among us devoured the weak. Then Allah sent us a messenger from among ourselves, whose lineage, honesty, trustworthiness, and purity we knew. He called us to worship Allah alone and to reject the stones and idols we and our fathers had worshipped. He commanded us to speak the truth, honor our promises, be kind to our relatives, be helpful to our neighbors, stop all forbidden acts, avoid bloodshed, avoid obscenities, stop oppressing orphans, and stop slandering chaste women." The king was moved and refused to hand over the Muslims. In 619 CE, Muhammad faced his darkest hour. Both his wife Khadija and his uncle Abu Talib died within months of each other. Khadija had been his strongest supporter, the first to believe in his message. Abu Talib, though never converting to Islam, had protected Muhammad from his enemies. Without this protection, the persecution intensified. Muhammad was pelted with stones when he tried to preach in the nearby city of Taif. He was rejected, humiliated, and physically attacked. It seemed like the mission was failing. But then came one of the most significant events in Islamic history, the night journey. According to Islamic tradition, one night Muhammad was transported from Mecca to Jerusalem, and from there ascended through the heavens, meeting earlier prophets and ultimately coming into the presence of Allah. This mystical experience, known as the Isra and Miraj, would forever link Islam to Jerusalem and establish the 5 daily prayers. Whether understood literally or metaphorically, the night journey reinvigorated Muhammad's mission. He returned with renewed purpose and a clearer vision of what lay ahead. Just when things seemed darkest, hope arrived from an unexpected source. Representatives from the city of Yathrib, 300 miles north of Mecca, came to Muhammad with an invitation. Their city was torn apart by tribal warfare, and they had heard of Muhammad's reputation as a just mediator. These men met Muhammad in secret and accepted Islam. They returned to Yathrib and spread the message. The following year, 75 people from Yathrib came to Mecca and pledged their allegiance to Muhammad in what became known as the Second Pledge of Aqaba. They invited Muhammad and his followers to come to their city, promising protection and support. It was the opportunity the Muslims had been waiting for. In 622 CE, Muhammad ordered his followers to begin emigrating to Yathrib in small groups to avoid detection. The Meccan leaders, realizing they were losing control, plotted to assassinate Muhammad. In a moment of high drama, Muhammad escaped from Mecca with his closest friend Abu Bakr. They hid in a cave for 3 days while search parties scoured the area. According to tradition, a spider's web across the cave entrance and a bird's nest convinced the searchers that no one could have entered recently. This migration, known as the Hijra, was so significant that it became the starting point of the Islamic calendar. It marked not just a physical journey, but a transformation from a persecuted minority to a community with political power and religious freedom. Yathrib was renamed Medina, meaning the city, and Muhammad's first act was to create one of history's most remarkable documents, the Constitution of Medina. This charter established a multi-religious state where Muslims, Jews, and pagan tribes were all citizens with equal rights and responsibilities. The Constitution guaranteed religious freedom, established collective defense, and created a system of justice that transcended tribal loyalties. It was a radical experiment in pluralistic governance that was centuries ahead of its time. The Jews have their religion and the Muslims have theirs, the Constitution declared. It was a revolutionary concept in a world where religious diversity was rarely tolerated. In Medina, Islam evolved from a spiritual movement into a complete way of life. The 5 daily prayers were established, creating a rhythm that united the community. The direction of prayer was initially toward Jerusalem, linking Islam to the Jewish and Christian traditions, but later changed to Mecca, emphasizing Islam's unique identity. The institution of zakat, or charitable giving, was formalized, creating the world's first systematic welfare state. Every Muslim was required to give a portion of their wealth to help the poor, the orphaned, and the destitute. Muhammad also established the principle of consultation, shura, in community decisions, laying the groundwork for democratic governance that would influence Islamic political theory for centuries. Peace was not to last. The Meccan trade routes passed near Medina, and tensions escalated when Muslim raids on caravans threatened Mecca's economic lifeline. What began as economic conflict soon became a struggle for the very survival of the Islamic community. In 624 CE, at a place called Badr, a small Muslim force of 314 men faced a Meccan army of nearly 1,000. Against all odds, the Muslims won a decisive victory. The Battle of Badr became a defining moment in Islamic history, seen by believers as divine validation of their cause. But victory was followed by defeat. The following year, at the Battle of Uhud, the Muslims suffered a devastating loss. Muhammad himself was wounded, and many of his closest companions were killed. The young Muslim community faced its greatest crisis. The defeat at Uhud taught crucial lessons about overconfidence and the importance of unity. It also revealed the resilience of the Islamic community, which regrouped and continued to grow despite the setback. In 627 CE, the Meccans launched their final assault. A Confederate army of 10,000 men, the largest force ever assembled in Arabia, marched on Medina. The city seemed doomed. But Muhammad had learned from a Persian convert named Salman about a defensive technique unknown in Arabia, the trench. The Muslims dug a massive ditch around the city, creating an impregnable barrier that the cavalry-dependent Meccans couldn't cross. For weeks, the two sides faced each other across the trench. Winter came, supplies ran low, and eventually, the Confederate army melted away. The siege was broken, and Mecca's military power was shattered. In 628 CE, Muhammad made a decision that shocked his followers. Instead of pressing his military advantage, he negotiated a peace treaty with Mecca. The Treaty of Hudaybiyah seemed to favor the Meccans, and many Muslims were disappointed. But Muhammad saw further into the future. The treaty gave Islam 10 years of peace to spread and consolidate. It also recognized the Muslims as equals, legitimizing their state. Most importantly, it allowed Muslims to make the pilgrimage to Mecca, where they could preach freely. The treaty was, in the words of the Quran, a clear victory, though it didn't seem so at the time. The peace lasted only 2 years. In 630 CE, a Meccan ally attacked a tribe allied with the Muslims, violating the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Muhammad had the justification he needed for the final confrontation. But instead of launching a campaign of revenge, Muhammad chose a different path. He assembled an army of 10,000 men and marched on Mecca, but his goal was not destruction, it was reconciliation. As the Muslim army approached Mecca, Muhammad sent word that anyone who stayed in their home, took refuge in the Kaaba, or sheltered in the house of Abu Sufyan, the Meccan leader, would be safe. It was an unprecedented offer of amnesty. The city surrendered without a fight. Muhammad entered Mecca not as a conqueror, but as a forgiver. He went directly to the Kaaba, where he destroyed the 360 idols, declaring, "Truth has come and falsehood has vanished." What happened next astounded the world. Muhammad gathered his former enemies, the same people who had tortured his followers, driven him from his home, and fought him for 8 years, and asked, "What do you think I will do with you? You are a noble brother, son of a noble brother." They replied nervously. "Go," Muhammad said. "You are free." This general amnesty, unheard of in the warfare of the time, won more converts than any military victory. Abu Sufyan, who had led the opposition to Islam for years, became a Muslim that day. So did many others who had been Muhammad's greatest enemies. The Kaaba was cleansed of its idols, but not destroyed. Instead, it was rededicated to the worship of the one God, returning to what Muslims believe was its original purpose as built by Abraham. The annual pilgrimage continued, but now it was a pilgrimage to the one God rather than to hundreds of tribal deities. This was typical of Muhammad's approach. He didn't destroy existing institutions, but transformed them. The result was an Islam that felt familiar to Arabs while being radically different in its core message. By 632 CE, Muhammad's mission was nearly complete. In what would be his final pilgrimage to Mecca, he delivered a sermon that summarized the core message of Islam to over 100,000 pilgrims gathered on the plain of Arafat. "All mankind is from Adam and Eve," he declared. "An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor does a non-Arab have superiority over an Arab. A white has no superiority over a black, nor does a black have superiority over a white, except by piety and good action." He continued, "Your lives and property are sacred. Hurt no one so that no one may hurt you. Remember that you will indeed meet your Lord, and that he will indeed reckon your deeds." 3 months later, Muhammad fell ill with a fever. As his condition worsened, he continued to lead prayers and give guidance to his community. His final public sermon contained a poignant choice. Allah had given him the option to remain in this world or to meet his Lord, and he chose to meet his Lord. On June 8, 632 CE, Muhammad died in the arms of his wife Aisha. The Muslim community was devastated. How could they continue without their guide and leader? Abu Bakr, Muhammad's closest friend, addressed the grieving community. "Whoever worshipped Muhammad, Muhammad is dead. But whoever worshipped Allah, Allah is alive and never dies." Muhammad's death created Islam's first constitutional crisis. He had left no clear instructions about succession, and the community was divided. Some believed Ali, Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law, should lead. Others supported Abu Bakr, Muhammad's closest companion. The debate was intense but brief. Abu Bakr was chosen as the first caliph, successor, but the disagreement over succession would later split Islam into Sunni and Shia branches, a division that continues to this day. The first four caliphs, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, are known as the Rashidun or rightly guided caliphs. Under their leadership, Islam expanded beyond Arabia at a pace that astounded the world. Abu Bakr's short reign, 632 to 634 CE, was spent consolidating the Arabian Peninsula and dealing with the Ridda Wars, where several tribes tried to break away from the Muslim state. His decisive action preserved the unity of the Muslim community and set the stage for expansion. Under Umar ibn al-Khattab, 634 to 644 CE, the Muslim armies exploded out of Arabia. In a series of lightning campaigns, they conquered the Sassanid Empire of Persia and took Syria, Palestine, and Egypt from the Byzantine Empire. But this wasn't just military conquest. Umar established a sophisticated administrative system, created a welfare state, and implemented policies of religious tolerance. Christians and Jews were protected minorities, often preferring Muslim rule to Byzantine or Persian oppression. The speed of expansion was unprecedented. In just 20 years, the Muslim empire stretched from Spain to Central Asia, covering more territory than the Roman Empire at its height. Umar's policies revealed the inclusive nature of early Islam. When he conquered Jerusalem, he personally negotiated the surrender and guaranteed the safety of all residents. He refused to pray in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, fearing it would be converted into a mosque. His economic policies were equally revolutionary. He established the first state pension system, created public works projects, and built roads and canals. The conquered peoples often found themselves better off under Muslim rule than under their previous rulers. In 644 CE, Umar was assassinated by a Persian slave while leading morning prayers. His death marked the end of the initial expansion phase and the beginning of new challenges. The Muslim empire was now so vast that it required different leadership skills than the simple, austere lifestyle of the early caliphs. Uthman ibn Affan, 644 to 656 CE, faced the challenge of governing a diverse empire. His most lasting contribution was the compilation of the Quran into a single, standardized text. As Islam spread, different regions had developed slight variations in recitation. Uthman commissioned a committee to create the definitive version and ordered all other copies destroyed. This decision preserved the Quran's integrity but also created controversy. Some saw it as necessary standardization. Others viewed it as suppression of valid traditions. After Ali's assassination in 661 CE, the Muslim world entered a new phase. The Umayyad dynasty, based in Damascus, transformed the simple Arabian state into a sophisticated empire. They were administrators and builders, creating a governmental system that would influence Islamic civilization for centuries. Under the Umayyads, Arabic became the administrative language of the empire, and distinctive Islamic art and architecture began to emerge. The Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem and the Great Mosque of Damascus remain masterpieces of early Islamic architecture. In 750 CE, the Abbasids overthrew the Umayyads and moved the capital to Baghdad. This marked the beginning of Islam's true Golden Age. The Abbasids positioned themselves as the heirs of not just Islamic tradition, but of Persian and Byzantine civilization as well. Baghdad became the largest city in the world, with over 1 million inhabitants. It was a cosmopolitan center where scholars from across the known world came to study and debate. The famous House of Wisdom was established, where Greek, Persian, and Indian texts were translated into Arabic. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Islamic Golden Age was the translation movement. Muslims didn't just preserve ancient knowledge, they actively sought it out. They translated works of philosophy, medicine, mathematics, and science from Greek, Persian, Sanskrit, and other languages. Christian and Jewish scholars worked alongside Muslims in this great project. The Caliph al-Ma'mun reportedly said that a single book was worth more than a castle full of gold. This intellectual curiosity and openness to other cultures was a defining characteristic of classical Islamic civilization. The results were extraordinary. Muslim scholars made groundbreaking discoveries in mathematics, introducing algebra and advancing geometry. They revolutionized medicine, with physicians like Al-Razi and Ibn Sina, Avicenna, writing texts that were used in European universities for centuries. In astronomy, they improved upon Ptolemy's work and made observations that challenged existing theories. They developed sophisticated instruments and created star charts that guided navigation for centuries. The scientist Al-Kindi declared, "We should not be ashamed to acknowledge truth and to assimilate it from whatever source it comes to us, even if it is brought to us by former generations and foreign peoples." The Golden Age wasn't just about science. It was also a time of tremendous cultural creativity. The poetry of Al-Mutanabbi, the philosophy of Al-Farabi, and the mystical writings of Al-Hallaj enriched Islamic literature. The tales of 1001 Nights, though compiled later, reflected the cosmopolitan spirit of this era. It was a time when a scholar could travel from Spain to Central Asia and find a common language of learning and culture. In 1095 CE, Pope Urban II called for a crusade to reclaim Jerusalem from Muslim rule. This began a series of religious wars that would span 2 centuries and profoundly impact both Christian and Muslim civilizations. The First Crusade succeeded in capturing Jerusalem in 1099, but the victory came at a terrible cost. The Crusaders massacred Muslims and Jews alike, creating a trauma that would echo through Islamic history. The Muslim response was initially fragmented, but gradually united under leaders like Nur ad-Din and culminated in the legendary figure of Saladin, Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. A Kurdish military leader, Saladin became the symbol of Islamic resistance to the Crusades. In 1187, Saladin recaptured Jerusalem. But unlike the Crusaders' bloody conquest, Saladin's victory was marked by restraint and magnanimity. He allowed safe passage for Christian civilians and protected holy sites. Even his enemies acknowledged his honor and chivalry. Just as the Muslim world was recovering from the Crusades, a new threat emerged from the east. In 1258, the Mongols, led by Hulagu Khan, captured Baghdad and killed the last Abbasid caliph. The destruction was catastrophic. The House of Wisdom was destroyed, and its precious manuscripts were thrown into the Tigris River. It was said that the water ran black with ink and red with blood. Hundreds of thousands died, and the irrigation system that had sustained Mesopotamian civilization for millennia was destroyed. But Islam proved remarkably resilient. Even as the central caliphate collapsed, new centers of Islamic civilization emerged. The Mamluks in Egypt and Syria, the Nasrids in Spain, and the rising Ottoman Empire carried forward the Islamic tradition. The Mongol invasions, devastating as they were, also led to new syntheses. Many Mongols converted to Islam, and the cultural mixing that resulted enriched Islamic civilization in unexpected ways. The 18th and 19th centuries brought new challenges as European powers colonized much of the Muslim world. This wasn't just political domination. It was a civilizational challenge that forced Muslims to reconsider their relationship with modernity. Some, like Muhammad Abduh in Egypt, argued for reform and adaptation. Others, like the Wahhabis in Arabia, called for a return to original principles. These debates continue to shape Islamic thought today. The 20th century saw the emergence of independent Muslim nations. From Indonesia to Morocco, Muslim societies struggled to define their identity in the modern world. Some chose secular nationalism, others Islamic governance, and many tried to find a middle path. The creation of Israel in 1948 and the subsequent Arab-Israeli conflicts added another dimension to these struggles, often conflating religious and political identities in complex ways. Today, Islam faces the challenge of being both a 1,400-year-old tradition and a living faith for over 1.8 billion people in a rapidly changing world. Questions of women's rights, democracy, science, and technology are being debated in mosques, universities, and parliaments from Morocco to Malaysia. The rise of extremist movements has unfortunately captured headlines, but they represent a tiny fraction of global Muslim opinion. The vast majority of Muslims continue to practice their faith peacefully while engaging with the modern world. Modern Islam is incredibly diverse. It encompasses the high-tech cities of the Gulf, the democracies of Indonesia and Turkey, the ancient traditions of Morocco and Iran, and the growing Muslim communities of Europe and America. Muslim scholars are grappling with contemporary issues while drawing on 1,400 years of theological and legal scholarship. Muslim artists, writers, and filmmakers are creating new forms of expression that honor their heritage while speaking to modern audiences. Throughout this long history, certain practices have remained constant, binding Muslims together across time and geography. These are the 5 pillars of Islam, the fundamental acts of worship that define Muslim identity. The first pillar, the Shahada, is the declaration of faith. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. This simple statement encompasses the entire theological foundation of Islam. The second pillar is Salah, the 5 daily prayers that create a rhythm of worship throughout the day. From the pre-dawn Fajr prayer to the evening Isha prayer, Muslims worldwide turn toward Mecca in a synchronized act of devotion. The third pillar is Zakat, the obligatory charity that redistributes wealth and creates social solidarity. It's not just individual charity, but a systematic approach to economic justice. The fourth pillar is Sawm, the fasting during the month of Ramadan. For 30 days, Muslims abstain from food, drink, and other physical pleasures from dawn to sunset, creating a shared experience of discipline and empathy for the less fortunate. The fifth pillar is Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca that every able-bodied Muslim should make at least once in their lifetime. The Hajj creates a unique sense of global Muslim unity, as millions of people from every nation gather in the same sacred space. The Quran, believed by Muslims to be the direct word of God, has remained unchanged since its compilation. Its 114 chapters cover theology, morality, guidance for personal conduct, and laws for society. The Hadith, the recorded sayings and actions of Prophet Muhammad, provide practical guidance for implementing Quranic principles. Together, the Quran and Hadith form the basis of Islamic law, Sharia, and Islamic ethics. Sharia, often misunderstood in the West, is not just a legal system, but a comprehensive approach to life that covers personal behavior, family relationships, business ethics, and social justice. It has evolved over centuries through the work of scholars who developed sophisticated methods of legal interpretation. The core principles of Islamic ethics include justice, adl, mercy, rahmah, wisdom, hikmah, and the general welfare, maslahah. These principles guide Muslims in making decisions about everything from personal relationships to international affairs. One of the most remarkable aspects of Islam is how it has maintained unity while embracing diversity. The same prayer is offered in the same language by Berbers in Morocco, Malays in Indonesia, and African Americans in Detroit. Yet each community has developed its own cultural expressions of the faith. This balance between unity and diversity is one of Islam's greatest strengths. It creates a sense of global community while allowing for local adaptation and cultural creativity. The question of women's role in Islam has been hotly debated throughout history. Early Islamic history includes remarkable women like Khadija, the first believer and successful businesswoman, Aisha, the scholar and teacher, and many others who played crucial roles in the development of the community. Contemporary Muslim women continue to debate how to honor their religious traditions while claiming their full rights as human beings. From Nobel Prize winners to heads of state, Muslim women are making their voices heard in every field. The relationship between science and faith, which has often been contentious in other religious traditions, has generally been more harmonious in Islam. The Quran encourages the pursuit of knowledge, and Muslim scholars have traditionally seen scientific discovery as a way of understanding God's creation. Today, Muslim scientists continue to make contributions to every field of knowledge, from medicine to space exploration. The challenge is maintaining this tradition of intellectual curiosity while staying true to religious principles. The question of how to govern Muslim societies continues to evolve. While some argue for theocracy, others advocate for secular democracy, and still others seek a middle path that honors both Islamic principles and democratic values. The diversity of Muslim societies, from the monarchies of the Gulf to the democracies of Indonesia and Turkey, shows that there is no single Islamic model of governance. The debate continues in parliaments, universities, and coffee shops across the Muslim world. As we come to the end of this journey through 1,400 years of Islamic history, one thing becomes clear. This is not a story that ended with the death of Prophet Muhammad. It is a living tradition that continues to evolve and adapt while maintaining its core identity. Islam today faces the same fundamental questions that all religious traditions face in the modern world. How do we honor the past while embracing the future? How do we maintain our identity while engaging with others? How do we stay true to our principles while adapting to changing circumstances?